Hey legends, Josh here. Welcome back to Hell of a Mouth, a Buffy fan cast. Today we're looking at my favourite comedic moments from episode 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Welcome to the Hellmouth. So, if this is your first time listening, why would it matter in the slightest what a random Australian guy thinks about the humour and the comedy in a near 30-year-old television show? Well, the thing is, guys, is that I don't really feel like I understand the lore of the Buffyverse quite the way some people do. I don't feel like maybe I understand television and narrative and filmmaking. Well, I certainly don't the way a lot of people do. But I have been doing stand-up comedy for over 6 years and producing mostly comedy-oriented content for the internet for about 15 years. As I said, I'm by no means an expert in making television or reviewing television, but I've got a good feel for jokes and what's funny. So this is kind of my lane, but I also feel that Buffy's one of the funniest shows ever, and it has remained that way through the entire time I've been watching the show. Certain things about maybe the teen elements or the drama, the acting at different times, all that can be a little bit hit and miss for a few moments here and there in the early seasons particularly, but the humour was, for the most part, particularly from the female characters, absolutely spot on. So without any further ado, let's jump into my review of the humour and the jokes from Welcome to the Hellmouth. So the first joke that had me laughing the other day was one from Willow, and it was when Buffy first approached her in the school courtyard, and Buffy said, "Hi, Willow, right?" To which Willow replied, "Why? I mean, hi." Just that delivery and the look on Willow's face. And I'm going to continue to use the character names, not the actor names, because let's just keep it clear for everyone who's listening. The look on Willow's face, priceless, but just the why was like, oh, this show's got a little bit of something going on comedically. So that was the first joke in the show that had me laughing. And I've seen Buffy, gosh, I don't know how much I've watched season 1. It's one of my least favourite seasons, so maybe a little bit less than some of the others, but probably 40 times maybe I've watched that episode or more. Still had me laughing. So the last joke in Welcome to the Hellmouth that had me laughing was when Buffy says to one of the vampires, "What's with the outfit? You look like DeBarge." And it's so funny because for a long time I didn't have the ability growing up in regional Australia to just go and look up who DeBarge was. But I looked it up again the other day to remind myself, such a good joke. Because his outfit is totally DeBarge. And it seemed like a bit of a sarcastic throwaway line that was maybe of the period, but it had me re-engaging with the show and going and doing some Googling. And it was really, really funny. So the best joke from Welcome to the Hellmouth, in my opinion, once again, is a bit of a sleeper line from Buffy when she's in the bedroom trying on outfits. She says, "Hello, would you like a copy of The Watchtower?" And that line is around the 21-ish to 21:30 mark in the episode. And I'm not sure why in the past that line hasn't caught me the way that it did the other day, but just such a funny line. The little accent that she puts on there, much better than the one I just did replicating that scene, is just so funny. And finally, for this little section of the show, the worst joke. And it's always been bad. I'm not a massive slapstick comedy fan beyond maybe Monty Python and Red Dwarf, two British shows. And I really disliked it when I was watching the other day, specifically for joke and humor related aspects of the episode. When Xander hits the handrail on his skateboard, I think it was meant to be a big entry for the character, kind of here's the funny guy, get ready for wacky, crazy, and energetic. This is Xander Harris. And really it just didn't have any weight, comedically or otherwise. It just was a bit dumb, to be honest. So that was my least favourite comedic moment. And if it's okay, can I just share my least favourite actual moment in this episode? It's when Jesse at the Bronze says, "Witness me prowling." I've always hated that line, and I continue to. It's just creepy. And I don't really have much else to say about it except, yeah, it gave me the ick, as the kids would say. So there were a few sneaky lines in this episode which were just threaded through other conversations. They weren't meant to be a punchline line or a, hey, here's a funny bit. They were just needed through other dialogue. And this was my favorite example of a sneaky line. It's when Buffy says to Giles, so you like partying with the students? Isn't that kind of skanky? And skanky was a word that was very of the time in a way, but the way that she said it, half embarrassed, like it was slipping out of her mouth before she caught herself saying it, and just the look on Sarah Michelle Gellar's face of, oh, well, I've said it now. I can't take that back. That was just really well acted and a great line that gave that scene a little bit of spice. And it was otherwise a pretty serious conversation for the most part. That was a really funny way to get into that conversation. So I wanted to award an episode MVP. This is a comedic MVP, although I think in this episode, the same character would win the overall most valuable player and also the comedic most valuable player, Cordelia Chase. Cordelia was so great in this opening episode that outside of Sarah Michelle Gellar and Anthony Stewart Head, Charisma Carpenter really was on another level of performance and investment in the character. Not the most likable person in the world, but so likable, lovable, amazing. So here are my favorite Cordy lines from the episode. Some of these are obviously iconic now, but I thought the first one that kind of maybe was a bit more of a sleeper is, I don't want to interrupt your downward mobility. Ugh, that had me dying. And as I said, I've heard that line 40 plus times in my life, probably heaps more, who knows? And it still gets me every time. The delivery, the quality of the word choice, and just how all of that sarcasm flows out of Cordy's character from the moment she is on screen for the first time in this series. Amazing. Another great one, which is almost a little sleeper as well, is nobody cool has Epstein Barr anymore, is just so amazing and perfect. And we can't move on from talking about Cordy being the episode MVP without mentioning, God, what's your childhood trauma? One of the great lines ever. We've all wanted to say it. I hope for people out there you've had a chance to say it. Certainly with 2025 eyes, an insensitive thing to say, but just perfectly delivered and iconic, as I said earlier. It's the iconic line from this episode, in my opinion, not just comedically, but maybe in totality. So just to finish up, two more quick segments. Who got done dirty? And to me in this episode, it's Joyce Summers. Joyce was portrayed by a 41-year-old Christine Sutherland, and in the scene in the bedroom where she's speaking to Buffy about going out to the Bronze and re-engaging with her social life, they made Joyce look 55. And trust me, I get it. It didn't help the narrative that early in the show, and it probably wouldn't have helped it at all moving forward if Buffy had have had a gorgeous, for the lack of a better term, super hot mum. That didn't help anything, but I feel like they really did her dirty with that haircut. Christine Sutherland is a beautiful woman, and she was only in her early 40s at the time. I feel like the writers and the costume designers and wardrobe were really pushing the idea early on that Joyce was boring, uptight, and just stuffy. And we find out throughout the series that that's not the case the entire time. But it really felt a little bit too over the top in those early episodes, particularly Welcome to the Hellmouth, where instead of letting her have her natural hair in any version, they're like, oh, maybe you should look like an 80-year-old woman and we'll throw the purple dye in there if we need to. Christine Sutherland, Joyce Summers got done dirty. So if you're agreeing or disagreeing with any of this, I'd love to know at Hell of a Mouth Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, and there's an email for myself in the show notes where you're listening today. I'd love to hear from you. One last segment for today, the steak rating. How many comedic steaks out of 5 am I giving Welcome to the Hellmouth? So initially I wanted to give this a 2 out of 5 because I didn't like any of Xander's dialogue or behavior. And again, Jesse's witnessed me prowling just makes me feel, once again, as the kids say, the ick. But then I thought about it. Cordelia is so good in this episode comedically. And some of the most iconic moments of the early phase of the show come from the character of Cordelia that I can't give it any less than a 4 out of 5. So, Cordy, you're the MVP. And also, you bumped the episode up 2 points out of 5 just because you were so great. So, Charisma Carpenter, iconic. Welcome to the Hellmouth. What a funny and exciting first episode. Luke, great bad guy. The introduction of the Master, truly terrifying from the first moment he's on scene, particularly thinking back to when I was 15 or 16 or however old I was when I first saw the show. I'm like, that is one creepy-ass dead guy. And with that, thank you so much. I'll talk to you again soon, and bye for now.